If you're struggling with jaw tension in singing, the problem might not actually be your jaw. Welcome back to Singing Tips with LJDstudios, the space where we take difficult singing concepts and break them down so you can actually understand and implement them for better singing. I'm Laura, and today we are talking about jaw tension. But before we get into it, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you haven't already, download my free guide, The 3-Tiered Approach to Becoming a Better Singer, linked in the description. Additionally, if you would like some direct feedback from yours truly for a fraction of the cost of private lessons, check out my membership option. It's a low-cost, low-time commitment way to study singing without ever having to ask the question, am I doing it right? All right, without further ado, let's deal with some jaw tension. Okay, so if you're struggling with jaw tension in your singing, you might already know this, but jaw tension does not make it easier to sing. Why? Tension in the jaw often translates to tension in the larynx through a long string of connective tissue, mostly that the jaw and the tongue connect at the hyoid bone in the back, which then eventually connects to the larynx. And we want our larynx to kind of be more or less mobile when we're singing so it can do what it needs to do to make the sound that we want to produce. So when our jaw is tight, that kind of gets in the way of what the larynx needs to do. Additionally, it's helpful if we can create the right acoustic shape or space with our mouths when we are singing. And so a tight jaw is going to impede that, right? Like oftentimes this is a better shape for singing than this, most of the time, in fact. And that just has to do with acoustics. So you're like, great, I already know this. Jaw tension is not helping my singing, but I can't get rid of it. I've done all the jaw loosening exercises and it's not helping. It's not going away. Why? Because the jaw is not your problem. That's why. Jaw tension is hip tension, and more specifically, pelvic floor tension. And if you have seen any of my other videos, you know I love to talk about the pelvic floor in singing, so this is just one more opportunity for me to talk about it. So first, let's talk about some of the muscles in your jaw. One is this like big old masseter muscle here, and the muscles in your jaw are linked in a way to your fight or flight response. Think about it, like if you're really stressed out, right, we clench the jaw. They're linked to that, right? So if you are singing and you are nervous, say, which often happens, we often get a tight jaw because that fight or flight response has been triggered. And then that sort of triggers the activation of these muscles. So that's one thing. I know that has nothing to do with your pelvic floor, but same thing with the pelvic floor. When fight or flight gets triggered, we tense up the pelvic floor. That's another thing that we do. And then I'm just going to put it blanketly out there. The muscles up here and then the muscles in your pelvic floor, they even kind of look similar if you look at them. They're related. Okay. So my guess is when you are experiencing some sort of like locking here in your jaw, you are probably experiencing some tightness in your hips and some tightness in your pelvic floor. So if you want to fix your jaw tension, you need to fix your hip and your pelvic floor tension. So what I first like to start out with this is just developing awareness of your pelvic floor, because most people don't even really have a lot of awareness of it. And I do have more in-depth videos on this, but your pelvic floor muscles are also your Kegel muscles, if you're familiar with how to do a Kegel. If you're not, if you wanted to stop the flow of urine, right? If you really need to pee and you're like, I don't want to do that, those muscles are your pelvic floor muscles. If you are trying to do a Kegel or stop the flow of urine, that is a contraction of your pelvic floor. That is not necessarily the position we want to be in for singing, but it is helpful to familiarize yourself with a contraction of the pelvic floor because our mind operates better when we're in extremes. So if you can feel a strong contraction, then you can probably feel the release, right? Relaxation is hard to feel if you've never felt the tensed version, right? Like maybe my shoulders relaxed, maybe they're not, but if I feel this first, now I know they're relaxed. Now I can actually relax them. So being able to engage a strong contraction of your pelvic floor is going to allow you to also find a strong release of your pelvic floor. So I always say start with that. Start with like doing a strong Kegel and then release that and see if you can really feel, what does that feel like when those muscles descend, when they drop, when they relax. That's what you want to start to get familiar with. Right? And then as you get familiar with that feeling, when you start singing and you start noticing that jaw tension creep in, can you move your awareness down to your pelvic floor? right? Do you feel some tightness through that part of your body and maybe even through some other parts of your lower abdomen and your hips? Do you feel that part of your body tightening? My guess is the answer is going to be yes, okay? And so what you want to start to do is when you find that jaw tension creeping in, right? If you've developed that good awareness of your pelvic floor, can you actively lengthen the pelvic floor? Can you actively let it descend, right? And as you do that, you might start to feel your jaw relax, because what's happening is as you lengthen the pelvic floor, you are also engaging the relaxation response in your body, which in turn will help release these muscles up here at your jaw, okay? When a small muscle group is in distress, for lack of a better word, there's probably a larger muscle group that is responsible for it, right? So I really think that your jaw, for most people, not everybody, but for most people, is probably a symptom of something larger in the lower part of your body not doing what it needs to be doing. Because the lower part of the body is responsible for grounding, for anchoring, right? And if we don't feel grounded and we don't feel anchored, then we probably feel stressed. And if we feel stressed, then we're going to lock our jaw, okay? So familiarize yourself with the pelvic floor, learn how to actively relax it. And then when you come to that part of your song or that vocal exercise that you're doing where you are struggling with jaw tension, can you actively relax the pelvic floor, right? That would be step one. Now, let's say, okay, you're like, I'm doing that and my jaw is still tight. It's possible, right? You might have to encourage some relaxation up at the level of the jaw as well. So then that's when I say, like, open your mouth like this, right? And sing your song. So let's say you're doing Defying Gravity. That's an easy one to practice it on because you already should kind of be in an open mouth shape anyways for those words. But instead of it's time to try defying gravity, where everything's tight, I'm going to lengthen the pelvic floor. And then I'm going to use my hands to open my mouth this way. It's time to try defying gravity, right? That worked out a lot better. Maybe the words are making it tough. So maybe you do it on a ya, ya, ya. And you just go, ya, 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 right? So my mouth is nice and open and I'm actively releasing the pelvic floor while I'm singing, and that's allowing the jaw to relax and release. So I highly encourage you to take whatever vocal exercise it is you're working on for jaw release and pair it with this work of the pelvic floor. You could also do some hip opening stretches. That's never going to hurt you. If you're familiar with yoga, get into a half pigeon, get into a goddess pose, something, or figure four, something that allows you to open the hips. That's really going to help you to lengthen the pelvic floor as well. Make sure you check out my other videos on the pelvic floor. Do them in conjunction with your jaw release exercises, and I can almost guarantee you are going to see better results. Good luck, you guys. Happy singing.